If someone had told me that a single sentence from my daughter would tear my life apart, I would have laughed. But that was before the afternoon, when she looked me straight in the face and said something so cold, so impossible that even now the memory feels unreal. And yet, this story doesn't begin with shouting or police threats. It begins with a party, and the first crack I was too afraid to notice. The sun hung low over Crescent Ridge, a quiet Arizona suburb known for its neatly trimmed lawns and two perfect smiles. On that warm Saturday evening, my daughter Marissa hosted one of her polished neighborhood gatherings. She thrived on them. The curated playlists, the coordinated cushions, the expensive wine she swore she bought on sale. I, Helen Ward, stood where I always did, 4 steps behind everyone else, carrying a tray of freshly baked butter cookies. My mother's recipe, the only thing I'd inherited besides her stubbornness. The backyard buzzed with conversation. Marissa's co-workers laughed too loudly. Her husband's cycling buddies compared new gear, and a few local moms whispered about spa deals. Marissa was at the center of it all, slim, sharp, and always performing. Her dark hair swung dramatically as she talked, as if even her hair needed attention. "Cookies," I said gently, offering the tray. A few people took one. One woman smiled gratefully. For a moment I felt useful. Then Marissa's voice cut through the laughter. "Oh, don't mind her," she said with a careless flick of the wrist. "She just kind of stays around." A few chuckles followed. Soft, embarrassed, awkward, but still a blow to the heart. I swallowed my humiliation, set the tray down, smiled so no one would see the sting in my eyes, and walked back inside. For the rest of the night, I washed dishes, scraped plates, and cleared empty cups while everyone else enjoyed the warmth of the evening. When the last guest left, Marissa clacked upstairs in her heels. Her husband Adam murmured a weak "thanks, Helen," and disappeared after her "not mom," not even mom-in-law. Just Helen. 3 days later, the house was quiet again. I was making tea, reaching for a ceramic mug when my elbow bumped a tall glass, sending it crashing onto the tiles. The shatter echoed like a gunshot, bent down to pick up the shards, and froze at the sound of Marissa's voice. "What did you do now?" Her tone was sharp, irritated, like I was an inconvenience. "I'm so sorry," I began. "I didn't. Stop." She lifted a hand. "Just know your place, okay? Don't start acting like you belong here just because you help with chores. Know my place?" The words cut deeper than she realized. I straightened slowly. "Marissa, I'm your mother, and—" She snapped. "A title isn't a free pass." Those 6 words were the first warning, a crack in the foundation. But I didn't see the collapse coming until later, until she said something far worse. Something that would turn my whole life upside down. Because that day, for the first time, I saw the truth in her eyes. I wasn't her mother anymore. I was a burden, a shadow she wanted gone. But I had no idea just how far she would go to erase me, or how quietly I'd end up destroying the world she thought she controlled. Before Marissa threatened me, before she spoke to me like I was intruding on my own life, I used to think that our bond, however strained, was impossible to break. But the truth is, the unraveling began long before we ever noticed. Long before Crescent Ridge. Long before the wine glasses and the fake laughter. Long before her sharp tongue learned to cut. It began with a house. It was the summer of 1987, when my late husband, Samuel, and I first stepped into the dusty old craftsman home on Juniper Lane in northern Arizona. The desert wind hummed through the cracked windows, carrying the scent of mesquite and sunburnt earth. The place was a wreck. Peeling paint, sagging floors, wiring that looked like it belonged in a museum. But Sam placed a hand on the battered banister, smiled, and said, "It's got good bones, Helen, just like us." And that was enough. We poured everything we had into that home. Extra shifts, skipped vacations, hand-me-down furniture, and more arguments than I care to count. The living room walls we painted together. The kitchen drawers Sam fixed, even when they didn't need fixing. The garden I built from dust with my own hands. Back then, our daughter Marissa was only 6, running barefoot through the hallways, her laughter echoing through every half-finished room. She would help paint, even though she got more streaks on herself than on the walls. I can still see her, standing in the sunlight with green paint on her cheek. Those memories were stitched into the house like threads into a quilt. The house wasn't perfect, but it was ours. A home built slowly, lovingly, honestly. And when Samuel died in 2009, it became the last piece of him I had left. I stayed there for 5 years after his passing. Each creak, each shadow, each sunbeam filtering across the dusty floors reminded me of him. Sometimes I swear I heard him humming in the evenings while I made tea. But loneliness wears down even the strongest people. In 2014, Marissa insisted I move in with her and Adam. "You shouldn't be alone, Mom," she said. "We have room. It'll be good for all of us." At first I resisted. The house felt like a second skin, worn but safe. But I eventually folded. I packed 30 years of memories. Sam's toolbox, our old wedding picture, the faded curtains I'd sewn myself, and even the stone from our first garden. I locked the deed in a wooden box and stored it deep inside my suitcase, just in case. Rented the house out, not because Marissa asked, but because I knew I wasn't ready to let it go. When I moved into her home, I expected warmth, maybe a second chance at closeness. Adam set up my TV. Marissa helped me hang my sweaters. I told myself it might work, but the small kindness didn't last long. Soon my knitting basket didn't fit the decor. My flower pots looked cluttered. My spices smelled too strong. My routines didn't match the house's energy. At first I complied. I always complied. I told myself it was temporary. But slowly, their home, Marissa's home, shrank around me. I was given a guest room, but really it was a cage dressed up with throw pillows. And somehow I still clung to hope. I still believed I'd made the right choice. Only years later did I realize that my biggest mistake wasn't moving in. It was believing I was welcome. Because soon, Marissa wouldn't just make me feel unwelcome. She'd make me realize I wasn't safe under her roof at all. In the beginning, living with Marissa felt like a delicate dance. One misstep and the music would shift. But over time, I realized something far more unsettling. There was no music, just rules. Rules I never agreed to. Rules that grew sharper, stricter, more suffocating with each passing month. At first, they were disguised as suggestions. "Mom, maybe don't cook with turmeric. The smell sticks. Could you keep the TV low? Adam wakes up early. Try not to leave personal things in the living room. It throws off the aesthetic." The aesthetic. If I heard that word one more time, I might have screamed. I adjusted my habits, tucked my belongings away, silenced my own routines. I reminded myself, they're stressed. I'm just helping. This is fine. But it wasn't fine. Soon, recommendations turned into expectations. No guests. No evening showers. No laundry except on Sundays. No using the back patio without asking. One day, she took it a step further. "Mom, try to be in your room by 9 p.m. We need the house to feel calm at night." Feel calm? I had never been less calm in my life. I laughed it off, pretending I was easygoing, pretending it didn't bother me. Because mothers swallow their pride more often than they swallow their food. But the walls felt tighter each day. And I finally understood my role when I overheard something I was never meant to hear. It was nearly midnight. I had tiptoed downstairs to heat a small mug of milk, hoping it would ease the stiff ache in my chest. As I reached the last step, voices drifted into the hallway from the dimly lit living room. Marissa and Adam. She's always here, Marissa whispered sharply. Just there. In every room. It's exhausting. Adam murmured something I couldn't quite catch. She's draining us, Marissa continued, an edge creeping into her voice. Like emotional clutter. That phrase stopped me cold. Emotional clutter. I stood in the shadows, gripping the banister until my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded like a frightened bird. I felt small, unwanted, disposable. They didn't see me. They didn't hear the glass shaking in my trembling hand. They didn't feel the crack forming deep inside. Emmy. I backed away and returned to my room without heating the milk. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't sleep the night after either. Because once you realize you're considered clutter, you begin to wonder how long it will take before someone decides to sweep you away altogether. Marissa's disdain only grew bolder after that night. She stopped saying thank you. Stopped including me in conversations. Stopped looking at me like I was a person. The final straw came at a dinner she hosted for 2 of Adam's colleagues. Smug men who liked to brag about vacations they hadn't earned. I had spent the entire afternoon preparing roast lamb, roasted corn, and homemade rolls. The kitchen smelled like the home I used to have. One of the men took a bite and said, "This is incredible. Who made it?" I opened my mouth, ready to answer, but Marissa beat me to it, laughing lightly as she sipped her wine. "Oh, that? Our resident house help made it." The room went silent, a long, uncomfortable pause. And then they laughed with her. Resident, house help. She didn't even bother to glance at me. I excused myself quietly and slipped away to my room. The laughter echoed behind me like the closing of a steel door. But the real darkness hadn't even begun. Because soon Marissa wouldn't just insult me. She tried to take something from me that wasn't hers to touch. If being called house help was the bruise, what Marissa did next was the knife. And she didn't hesitate when she twisted it. It happened on an otherwise quiet Tuesday morning, the kind of morning when nothing should go wrong. I had just finished folding the laundry. 3 neat piles. Mine, Adam's, and Marissa's. I still folded their clothes out of habit, the same way I used to fold Marissa's tiny dresses when she was a child. Back then, I never imagined that one day she'd treat me like one of the wrinkles she wanted to iron out of her life. Marissa walked into the room holding a sleek navy folder under her arm. The kind of folder that always meant papers, forms, and signatures. She sat across from me with the practiced poise of someone who had rehearsed a speech. "Mom," she said, crossing her legs, "I need a small favor." I instantly felt my chest tighten. Marissa only used that tone when she wanted something important. "What kind of favor?" I asked. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Just a signature. It's nothing big. Just paperwork, really." My hands froze mid-fold. "What kind of paperwork?" "It's about the Juniper Lane property," she said casually, as if she were discussing grocery lists. "It would just make things easier if it were in my name." My heart dropped like a stone. She wasn't asking. She had already decided. "I don't think that's necessary," I said quietly. She sighed dramatically, as if I was the unreasonable one. "Mum, it's just a signature. You wouldn't even notice anything changed. Honestly, it'll be easier for everyone. Easier for everyone." Translation: easier for Marissa. "No. I said, firmer this time. The house stays in my name. It's all I have left of your father. Her smile faded. She closed the folder, stood up, and walked out without another word. I thought the conversation was over. I was wrong. A week later, my phone rang. It was my bank. "We're reviewing a mortgage application connected to your property," the agent said. "We need to confirm a few details." "Mortgage? What mortgage?" My palms grew cold. "What application?" I asked. The silence on the other end felt long and heavy. When the agent finally explained, everything inside me trembled. There was an application listing Marissa as the homeowner. Forged documents. Forged signature. Forged inheritance statement. All claiming that she was the rightful owner of the Juniper Lane house. And I was simply an aging dependent under her care. My ears buzzed. For a moment, the world tilted. I had to grip the counter just to stay upright. "Send me the copies," I whispered. When the documents arrived, I spread them across the kitchen table. My signature, a clumsy imitation of it, stared back at me. Pages filled with lies. With theft, not mistakes. Not misunderstandings. Intentions. That evening, I confronted her. She was pouring water into a glass when I stepped into the kitchen, holding the papers in my shaking hand. I spoke to the bank. I said. She froze for half a second. Just long. Enough for me to see the truth in her eyes, before she went back to her calm mask. "You shouldn't be looking into things you don't understand," she said coolly. "I understand perfectly," I replied. "You tried to steal my house." She shrugged. Like it was nothing. "Mom, you don't even use it. You don't contribute here. You just exist. I'm doing what makes sense." Exist. That word sliced deeper than any curse. "It's my house," I said. "My name on the deed." She stepped closer, voice low and sharp. "You think that matters? You're here because I let you be here. And if you won't cooperate, then maybe you shouldn't be here at all." My breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you have 1 week to leave," she said calmly, almost sweetly. "Or I'll call the police and tell them you're trespassing." But she didn't know the one thing that would change everything. The thing I'd kept hidden for years. And what happened next? She never saw it coming. I didn't sleep the night Marissa threatened to call the police on me. Not because I was frightened, but because fear had finally burned itself out, leaving something colder, clearer, and far more powerful in its place. I had spent years shrinking myself to fit inside her home. Now I realized the truth. I was never meant to fit there. Not in her rules. Not in her life. Not in her story. So that night, at exactly 3:07 a.m., I rose from bed without a sound. The house was silent. The kind of silence that makes every memory feel louder. I moved slowly, deliberately, the way you do when you've rehearsed a moment 100 times in your mind. I opened my closet and pulled out the old navy suitcase I hadn't touched in years. Dust coated the handle like a reminder of how long I'd ignored myself. I packed only essentials. A few clothes. My wallet. My reading glasses. The old photograph of Samuel and me on our wedding day. And most importantly, the original deed to the Juniper Lane house. Tucked inside a protective folder Sam, and I once joked would outlive us both. I paused, staring at the document. Marissa thought I was helpless. She thought I had nowhere to go. But she had forgotten the most important thing. I still owned the land she wanted to steal. After packing, I went to my small writing desk and took out a pen. I wrote a simple note. No anger, no accusations. Just truth. "Marissa, I'm done asking for space in a home I paid for with my life. I have nothing left to give you. I'm leaving now, not in shame, but in choice. Mum, I folded it neatly and placed it beneath the ceramic teapot she despised. The one, she said, disrupted the kitchen aesthetic. A small, quiet rebellion. Then I stepped out the back door. The early morning air smelled of damp soil and the distant hum of desert wind. I didn't look back. Not once. The motel I checked into sat just off Highway 24 clean. Plain. The kind of place that accepts cash without questions. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, flickering with the tired persistence of something that refused to die. I sat on the edge of the stiff bed and unwrapped the plastic from a small cup. On the muted TV, a late-night host joked about politics. It all felt strangely unreal, like I had slipped into someone else's life. But when I reached into my purse and pulled out a business card, reality sharpened. Harold Winters, retired attorney. Samuel's closest friend. He had held our daughter when she was born. He had carried my husband's casket. He had never once failed us. I dialed the number with trembling fingers. Helen? His voice came, groggy but gentle. Is everything all right? No, I whispered. But I'm ready to fix it. He didn't ask for details. He didn't demand explanations. He simply said, come by at 10. Bring whatever paperwork you have. And just like that, for the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar. Control. I had control. I barely slept, not out of fear, but because something inside me, something that had been quiet for too long, had finally woken up. By dawn, I knew what I needed to do next. Because the moment I walked into Harold's house with that deed, the plan that would dismantle Marissa's world piece by piece finally began. Harold lived in a modest adobe-style bungalow on the east side of town, tucked behind 3 lemon trees that had grown crooked with age. When I arrived at 9:58 a.m., he was already standing in the doorway, glasses perched on his forehead, mug of black coffee in hand. You look terrible, he said, but his voice held nothing but warmth. I laughed for the first time in weeks. Inside, the house smelled of old books and citrus. He led me to the kitchen table, the same table where Samuel and I had shared dinner with him decades ago. Harold set my papers out neatly, adjusting them like a surgeon preparing instruments. Let's see what mess she's made, he muttered. I watched his face as he read. The tightening jaw, the raised brow, the quiet exhale of disbelief. She tried to forge your signature, he said finally. These aren't even good forgeries, sloppy and illegal. Can she take the house? I asked. Harold set his palm firmly over the deed. No, this house is yours, Helen. Every inch of it. She can't take what doesn't belong to her. Hearing those words didn't make me relieved. They made me resolute. I want to sell it, I said. As quickly as possible. Harold paused, searching my expression. You're certain? I've been certain for years, I replied. He nodded slowly. Then let's get to work. When I left Harold's home, the desert sun was already warming the sidewalks. 2 blocks away stood a tiny real estate office with lavender lettering across the glass door. Sierra & Co. Realty inside. Behind a desk cluttered with color-coded folders, sat Sierra Jennings, a bright-eyed woman in her early 30s with a warm smile. I remembered her mother from my library days. Sierra used to come in after school, scribbling homework answers while eating gummy bears. She stood up the moment she saw me. Double quotes, Mrs. Ward. Oh my God, it's been years. We exchanged a brief hug, and then I told her what I needed. I want the Juniper Lane house listed this week, I said. No open houses. I don't want complications. Sierra didn't pry. She didn't ask why. She simply nodded as if she'd been preparing for this moment. I'll handle everything personally. I'll start tonight. That evening, We drove to the house so she could take pictures and inspect the property. I waited in the car, refusing to step inside the place I once called home. I thought being near it would hurt, but strangely, it didn't. It felt like closure. When Sierra finished, she returned to the car and handed me a clipboard. "We can list tomorrow morning," she said. "But you need to sign the authorization first." I took the pen. I expected my hand to tremble. I expected hesitation, maybe even a tear. But when I pressed the pen to the paper, the signature flowed smooth and steady. The first decisive stroke I'd made in years. For once. My choice didn't feel like survival. It felt like freedom. The listing went live at 8:12 a.m. the next day, and everything changed. The real estate market in northern Arizona had exploded in recent years, and the house on Juniper Lane, even with its aging paint and cracked tiles, was a gem in a desirable area. By 10 a.m., Sierra had 2 inquiries. By noon, she had 3 virtual showings scheduled. By 4 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message. "We have 3 offers, all above asking." My breath caught. In one day, everything Marissa believed she controlled slipped right out of her grasp. And she didn't even know it yet. But she would. And when she finally found out, her world would collapse faster than I ever imagined. The house sold faster than Sierra or Harold expected. Faster than I expected. 2. By sunset, we had a signed, sealed offer from a woman named Diane Hartwell, a recently divorced accountant starting over. She paid in cash, no contingencies, no drama. Sierra said she seemed kind, quiet, the type of person who respected walls, doors, and the history behind them. I liked that. I signed the final contract in my motel room. The pen scraped across the paper like a whisper of goodbye. The Juniper Lane house was no longer mine. But more importantly, it was no longer Marissa's to covet. The next morning, I woke to my phone vibrating relentlessly. Marissa. Of course. 8 missed calls. Then 9. Then 12. No voicemails. She never left voicemails unless she wanted something. I turned the phone face down. I wasn't ready to hear her voice yet. At 8:37 a.m., as I was stirring powdered creamer into a cup of motel coffee, a delivery knock rattled my door. When I opened it, a courier stood with a large envelope. "Delivery for Ms. Helen Ward," he said. Inside was the official transfer packet, notarized, stamped, and sent to Marissa's home with a matching copy. Along with it, a formal notice of tenancy termination, 7 days to vacate. New ownership takes effect immediately. Seeing my own name in the sender line felt surreal. Not Mum, not Mother, just Helen Ward, the legal owner who had exercised her rights. Somewhere across Crescent Ridge, Marissa was opening her own envelope at that exact moment, and watching her imagined inheritance disappear. I didn't have to wonder how she reacted. At noon, Sierra texted me. "Your daughter called the office. She tried to dispute the sale." I closed my eyes. Of course she did. "What did you tell her?" I typed back. Sierra replied, "That everything is verified with the county, and that you are, and always were, the sole owner." I ended the conversation after that. I exhaled slowly, letting years of swallowed humiliation drift away. The next call came minutes later, my phone buzzing violently across the motel nightstand. Marissa again. This time, she left a voicemail. Her voice shook with panic and disbelief. "Mom, what are you doing? You can't sell this house. We live here. Are you losing your mind? Call me back. None of this makes sense." I listened to the message twice. She kept saying we. Not once did she say you built it. You paid for it. You lived there first. I'm sorry. Or even I understand, Dot. It was always we. As if she had somehow convinced herself that the house was hers by existence alone. She thought she owned me. She thought she owned everything that came with me, Dot. And now she was realizing the truth. She owned nothing, Dot, by midweek. Crescent Ridge was buzzing with gossip. Neighbors whispered on manicured lawns. Cars slowed in front of the house. Curtains twitched. She's getting evicted. No. She's squatting. Her mother sold the place without warning. Can you believe it? Her OWN mother. Somewhere, someone muttered the line that would haunt her reputation. Imagine being thrown out of your mother's house. And Marissa heard it all. She walked outside that morning with her sunglasses too big. Her hair messy, her jaw tight. She carried herself like nothing was wrong, but her shaking hands told the real story. Adam didn't help her pack. He didn't defend her. He didn't even stand beside her. He just watched from the driveway, looking drained, disappointed, done. When she tried to hand him one of her suitcases, he stepped back. I'm going to stay with my mom, he said flatly. I need space. What? She whispered, but he was already walking away, leaving her standing alone on the curb with 2 overstuffed bags, and a life collapsing behind her. And that night, when she showed up outside my new apartment begging me to let her in, that's when I learned the final, painful truth about my daughter. My new apartment sat on the 22nd floor of a quiet building overlooking downtown Mesa. Not fancy, not grand, but peaceful. And for the first time in years, the air felt like mine. I spent my first few nights in a strange mix of relief and disbelief. I set up a tiny herb garden on the balcony, little pots of mint, rosemary, and basil. Samuel loved mint tea. The scent always reminded me of late-night talks and soft laughter. That evening, I brewed a small pot of mint tea, wrapped myself in my shawl, and stood at the window. The city hummed beneath me, headlights moving like fireflies, neon signs flickering against the twilight sky. My phone buzzed once. Marissa. Then twice. Then 4 times. I didn't answer. I placed it face down on the table and inhaled the warm steam of my tea, letting it settle nerves I didn't know I still had. 10 minutes later, the buzzer at the building's entrance shrilled. I frowned and walked to the monitor, and there she was. Marissa. Her hair was tangled, her coat too thin for the evening chill. Her eyes were red, swollen from what looked like hours of crying. She clutched a duffel bag like it was the last solid thing in her world. She pressed the call button again, her voice cracking through the speaker. Mom, please. Just please open the gate. I have nowhere to go. My fingers hovered over the intercom button. Years of memories tried to pull me backward, her tiny hand wrapped around my thumb as a child. Her laughter echoing through our Juniper Lane home. Her running into my arms after scraped knees and childhood fears. Those moments tugged at me. But so did every insult, every dismissal. Every time she told me I was clutter, a burden, an embarrassment. So I didn't press the button. Not yet. She sank to her knees on the concrete, hands pressed together the way she used to when she begged for a new doll at age 5. Mom, I'm sorry, she whispered. Please, I just need a place for tonight. The desperation in her voice clawed at old wounds. The mother in me wanted to run down the stairs. The woman in me, the one she had tried to erase, stood still. Stepped out onto the balcony. She looked up. Her face lit up with a fragile glow of hope, as if she believed seeing me meant forgiveness was moments away. I held her gaze for a long, painful second. Then I said quietly, so quietly the evening wind nearly stole the words, Marissa, you taught me something. You taught me that even a mother can be pushed out of her own home. So don't think for a moment you can outsmart an old woman, especially your mother, twice. Her expression shattered. She bowed her head, shoulders shaking, but I didn't go down to her. I walked back inside, picked up my tea and gently closed the balcony door. Then I pulled the curtain shut. I didn't watch her walk away. I didn't need to, because I had walked away long before she ever did. People think revenge comes with shouting, fire, or destruction. But sometimes revenge is simply reclaiming the space where your name belongs. Sometimes it's choosing yourself after a lifetime of choosing everyone else. Sometimes it's silence, the kind that speaks louder than any apology that arrives too late. Now I sit in my little apartment, surrounded by peace instead of belittlement, mint instead of bitterness. And if someone out there has been treated like I was ignored, used, dismissed in a home they helped build, then hear me clearly. You are not clutter. You are not a burden. And you are never too old to take your life back. Because justice doesn't need anger. Sometimes she simply needs a pen, a deed, and a woman who finally remembers her worth. If you like my story, please like this video, subscribe channel and comment below what kind of story you like this. I will find for you real stories.